Recording in progress.
Chair Nutter, we are ready to begin.
Start over. Welcome to this regular meeting of the Planning Commission this Tuesday evening, January 23rd. I now call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ashley, could you please do the roll call?
Yes, Chair Nutter,
Present.
Vice Chair Patel,
Present.
Commissioner Nugent,
Present.
Commissioner Wiggins,
Present.
and Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Thank you. This is a regular meeting. The conference ID is 847-4880-1985, and the passcode is 898196. Good evening and welcome. We are excited to be here in person with options for virtual participation. For those attending in person, please complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you will be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press star 9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press star 6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for that specific item. And finally, we welcome speakers providing public comment, but please be advised this is a limited public forum. As such, speakers must stay on topic if speaking to a particular agenda item. If speakers fail to follow these rules, they will be warned, and if they continue to disregard the rules, their opportunities to speak will be ended. We were notified today of an issue with the project plans from item number 2, not displaying correctly on PDF downloads of the full agenda packet. The plans displayed correctly when downloaded individually. This issue has since been corrected. A printed copy is available for the public outside of the council chambers. Ashley, could you please read the consent calendar?
Yes, item number 1, Planning Commission meeting minutes approval. Approve the minutes of the regular meetings of October 24th, 2023 and December 12th, 2023.
Are there any members of the commission that would like to pull either of these items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, I will then ask the public if there are any items that you would like to see pulled from the consent calendar.
Chair Nutter, we have no public commenters.
Great. Then we can take this to a vote.
A motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second it.
Chair Nutter,
Yes.
Vice Chair Patel,
Yes.
Commissioner Nugent,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiggins,
Yes.
and Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll close that item and open up public comment. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may address the Planning Commission at this time. State law prevents the Commission from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. Public comment is generally limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, that is subject to the Commission's discretion and can be extended if the Commission wishes to do so. Ashley, do we have any public speakers?
We don't have any public commenters at this time.
Okay, we will close that item. And can you open up the next item for us, Ashley?
Yes, item number 2, 1471 East 3rd Avenue, new freestanding commercial sign, PA 2023-001.
Thank you. We will start with a staff presentation, followed by applicant presentation, clarifying questions from the commission, and public comments. The applicant will be given up to 15 minutes to present, and members of the public are given 2 to 3 minutes to speak, depending on the number of speakers. The applicant may also be given 5 minutes at the end to respond to the public comments. Once the public hearing is closed, the chair may ask staff to respond to any public comments, and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Finally, if a decision is made tonight, the decision of the Planning Commission can be appealed to the City Council within 10 calendar days. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Abednetter, and hello, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Ralph Robinson, and I'm a consultant associate planner who will be presenting this item. The request before you is for a site plan and architectural review at 1471 East 3rd Avenue for a new freestanding sign measuring 22 feet, 4 inches in height. Now, as a freestanding sign over 8 feet, it's been referred to you for your approval. The proposal also includes canopy signs and a new building sign, subject to the city sign ordinance, Chapter 25, and some minor improvements to the building and canopy. The project site is located at 1471 East 3rd Avenue. It is a just under 8,000 square foot parcel located at the northwest corner of East 3rd Avenue and South Norfolk Street. The site is zoned R4, or high density multiple family. The existing use consists of a gas station, an auto repair shop, and a small food market. This use is an existing non-conforming one that will be maintained per the exceptions provided for non-conforming uses within the zoning code. The project includes new signage throughout the site, including replacement of an existing 16 feet 10-inch freestanding gas price sign with a new 22 feet 4-inch freestanding sign in the same location, and that will also use the same sign footing. Its proposed sign is a 2-sided cabinet sign measuring about 3.5 feet wide by just over 11 feet tall. The sign will include the gas station name and display gas prices using 6-inch tall LED numerals. The proposal also includes removal of the existing cabinet gas price sign, new canopy signage, and a new face sign on the existing building, as well as branding updates to the canopy, gas pumps, and building. There are no updates to the number of gas pumps or overall dimensions of the building or canopy. The number of signs is within the total allowed by Chapter 25, with the exception of the freestanding gas price sign. There is an exception for those provided specifically for signs displaying gas prices, both within the zoning code and the California Professions Code. The applicant, prior to submitting their application, conducted neighborhood outreach. They received no public feedback during that process, and no additional comments have been received since the city provided its own public notice to parties within 1,000 feet prior to this meeting. With that, staff is recommending the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to approve the project site plan and architectural review. This includes my presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions. And we also have the applicant here. They do not have a presentation for you, but they are available to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Bring it back to the commission for any questions to staff or the applicant.
I have a question. Is there an existing sign on the west side of the gas station that's right next to the apartment building?
Yes, and that's going to be removed and not
Okay.
replaced as part of the
Okay,
project.
that's what I thought I saw in the documents. Great. That's my question.
Okay. Any question or any slips from the public for comments? Ashley?
We don't have any public commenters in person. If you're on Zoom and you want to comment on this project, please raise your hand at this time. It looks like we have no public commenters for this item.
Thank you. We'll bring it back to the commission if there's any further comments or concerns.
I just have one kind of really quick comment that's just an anecdote. I just had to laugh a bit about this project because the first time I ever went before a planning commission early in my career as an architect was for sign approval for a gas station. And I remember thinking to myself as a young person right out of college, like, wow, I worked my way through college to in architecture school to work on gas stations. But this made me think, it turns out that, our environment's made up of lots of different parts, some of them exciting and some of them more ordinary. So my comments are that the existing sign being removed works really well for the apartments next door, and I think this project will be a good improvement for that corner. And of course, I take no issue with the proposed new sign.
Thank you.
Comes full circle, I guess.
So are we looking for a motion here and then a vote? Can we see the resolution, please?
I can
Through
make
the
a
chair,
motion.
yeah.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution to approve the site plan and architectural review SPAR for a new freestanding gas station sign at 1471 East 3rd Avenue, based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval.
I'll second that.
And for a vote, Chair Ebnetter,
Yes?
Vice Chair Patel,
Yes.
Commissioner Nugent,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiggins,
Yes.
and Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Great. We'll close that item and move on to item number 3.
Item number 3, 2 West 3rd Avenue, pre-application review for a new office building, PA 2023-054.
Thank you. We will start with a staff presentation, clarifying questions from the commission, and public comments. Members of the public are given 2 to 3 minutes to speak, depending on the number of speakers. Once the public comment period is closed, the commission will deliberate and provide input and guidance to staff. This item is a study session, so there will not be a vote taken this evening. Brendel, are you ready to present? Thank you.
There we go. Yes, Chair. Okay, thank you, Chair Ebnetter, members of the Planning Commission, Rendell Busto, Senior Planner, Staff Planner for Agenda Item 3 this evening, which is a study session for a pre-application at 2 West 3rd Avenue. So starting with the project location, this is an aerial of the project's vicinity, which is in the downtown's area, which is west of the downtown core. The subject parcel is highlighted here in orange and is located on the northwest corner of West 3rd Avenue and South El Camino Real. This map also illustrates the location of the downtown Caltrain station, shown in red, which is about a half mile from the project site. So looking a little bit closer at the site, the parcel area is approximately 11,464 square feet and has a general plan land use designation of executive office / high density multifamily. And the site is zoned E2-2/R5, which is executive offices with a residential overlay. The former use was a gas station, which was demolished and removed in 2014, and the site has since been maintained as a vacant lot. So expanding the aerial a bit further, this image shows the adjacent land uses, which include the Casa Baywood apartments to the north across Arroyo Court, commercial uses to the south, which are the Bank of America building and the city's downtown library. And there's additional commercial uses to the east across El Camino Real, as well as a condominium building at 20 West 3rd Avenue, immediately west of the site. So here are just some more recent images of the existing site. So the upper image faces the site's El Camino and Arroyo Court corner, and the lower image faces the 3rd and El Camino corner. So on the project description, the proposed project is a 3-story office building with a total floor area of 19,989 square feet. The proposed building is within the maximum 55-foot height limit at 44 and a half feet. The project does not propose on-site parking, as it does qualify for Assembly Bill 2097, given its proximity to major public transit, which is the downtown Caltrain station. Regarding landscaping improvements, the project proposes to remove 3 on-site trees and proposes to plant 7 new street trees. So here's the proposed site plan with some callouts of some key site items. So first, the primary entrance is on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, along the corner of 3rd and El Camino. Toward the left side, the site incorporates a gated walkway, which provides access to private long-term bike parking, as well as a secondary entrance. Lastly, toward the upper side of the screen, service rooms, including trash and electrical, are placed along Arroyo Court. And as was indicated in the staff report, there may be changes to the location of the fire control room in the formal planning application in order to meet fire department requirements. So briefly on some prior projects that were proposed on this same site. So there were 2 prior applications, one of which was approved in 2017. No building permits were ever approved to allow this construction. The second was a pre-application in 2019, which had a substantially same design as the pre-application being considered this evening. That formal planning application did not move forward. So this current pre-application was filed in August of 2023, after which the applicant held the required neighborhood meeting this past December. And so at this meeting, 3 members of the public attended, where the key concerns were opposition to the proposed office use and a concern for the lack of on-site parking. So moving to the applicable codes and policies. So first, with zoning code requirements, the project, as noted previously, is zoned E2-2/R5. As an all-office development, the project is required to comply with the development standards in the E2 zone. So as shown in this table, the project substantially complies with applicable code requirements, including maximum floor area, the maximum building height, and conforms with the minimum setbacks and open space. So on local policy documents, the site is subject to the downtown area plan, which places the site in the West El Camino sub-area. The downtown plan recommends pedestrian level enhancements in this sub-area to improve the connection between El Camino Real and the downtown core. The pedestrian master plan guides developments to improve the public realm, and so the project is subject to a 14-foot overall sidewalk width based on the PED plan, and is subject to a 7.5 minimum setback along street frontages based on the zoning code. And lastly, on the bicycle master plan, the plan requires a Class 2 bike lane along the 3rd Avenue frontage. The project's not required to construct the improvements. However, Public Works staff will evaluate the formal plan application site plan to ensure that there's no conflict posed should these facilities be constructed in the future. So on to the discussion areas in which staff would like the Planning Commission's comment on, so starting with the land use, followed by building design and other aspects. So starting on the first discussion topic, as noted previously, the project is an all-office building which does comply with the E2 zone. Regarding public input behind this topic, a few neighborhood meeting attendees did raise concern for the amount of citywide office construction and recommended other uses, including public open space or retail uses. Separate from the neighborhood meeting, staff received 1 public comment specifically addressing this concern, in which they recommended residential uses instead of office uses. There were no specific questions for the Planning Commission on this topic, but should the Commission provide comments on this topic, staff would ask the Commission to bear in mind that office uses do comply with the underlying zoning district. So on the second discussion item on building design, just an overview of the architectural design. The overall style is contemporary, but also incorporates some traditional elements. Overall, the primary exterior materials are brick, veneer, and stucco. And some key architectural elements are a glass corner, recessed multi-height windows, vertical pilasters, as well as metal canopies. So in the pre-application comment letter, staff asked the applicant to consider some refinements on the building design, particularly with respect to two primary areas. The first of which in which staff has asked the applicant to consider integrating architectural features or architectural styles of nearby buildings. And second is to refine the building's corner design along the 3rd and El Camino frontage, which is a key gateway into the downtown core. So to help evaluate these comments, here are some images of the adjacent buildings, which do vary in architectural style and treatment. In addition, certain buildings, corner buildings, have unique corner designs that could be considered when making suggestions for improving the corner design. And so lastly, when considering other aspects, staff would like to highlight the expected plan application types, which include a site plan and architectural review, site development plan application for tree removal, as well as environmental review in accordance with the CEQA. Regarding next steps, the applicant will have an opportunity to revise the application based on Planning Commission input and community input in order to file the formal planning application. And so to recap the discussion items for the study session, the first item in which the commission could comment on is on the proposed land use based on public input. Second, on building design, staff asked the commission specifically to comment on the architectural style and ways to improve the 3rd and El Camino corner. And lastly, the commission could opt to comment on other aspects the applicant should consider when preparing the formal application. So with that concludes staff's presentation. Happy to take questions the commission may have. The applicant is present this evening and will be providing a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rendell. Is the commission fine with going directly to the applicant's presentation? Great. Can we please have that?
I guess I can get started while Rendell's pulling it up. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. Excited to be here tonight. Evan Sokolowski with Architect. We are the architects on the project. As Rendell gave a little history, and like he always does, he does a great presentation, so I don't know that I have to do much, but want to give a little bit of background. We're excited to be back here because, as Rendell mentioned, the project before, the reason we weren't able to move forward was actually we were in the process of doing the application when the city's parking requirements changed. And at that time, the parking requirements required us to have 50% parking on site. And the site is very constrained. There's not enough room for ramps, all of those different things, and it simply wasn't feasible to do, which was very disappointing to us that we couldn't keep the project moving forward at that time. Opportunity arose with the AB 2097 and allowed us to bring the project back to life, and as you see it here before you. So excited to get your feedback, and let me jump into the project. Oh, okay. So a number of the goals we have is just, again, appropriately scaled project. It's a unique site with what's surrounding it. We also understand it's part of the four-corner gateway into the city. It's one of the reasons that having this site been vacant for a while, we're excited to have the opportunity to build something that we feel is appropriate to finish that corner that hasn't been quite finished. Always want to improve the pedestrian environment, and we think taking it from a vacant corner to an active building, we think is an improvement and will help the city. And then we looked at it as a transitional design, something that, as Rendell said, has some contemporary elements, but also some historical elements. We looked at some of the buildings around and realized, and one of the things we appreciated about El Camino and some of the surrounding area is there is quite a bit of variety. And so everything we don't feel needs to look the same. Don't need to get into the project site as we know where it is. Again, kind of seeing the vacant lot. As you can see, there are some adjacent residential multifamily buildings that are quite large, and including the towers just adjacent to us, which lend to a unique scale. And when we look at our building on some of the slides, you'll see it's actually quite small in relation to that. As we're proposing it now, we feel it is a transit-oriented project in proximity to the downtown rail station. It is an office building. It is 3 stories, very small floor plates, which we think is actually a unique opportunity in this area. We do know there's a lot of larger office buildings, but sometimes the smaller floor plates are an opportunity for smaller tenants and industries or companies that are growing to start out. Also has a significant outdoor deck area on the 3rd level. As mentioned, our lobby and entry is off the corner of 3rd Avenue and El Camino. Very simple floor plate with just office on the 1st floor, a little amenity space off the rear, and again, moving up office, that's the 1st floor again, and then there's office space on the 2nd and 3rd floor. The architecture itself, again, brick and stucco are the primary elements, trying to take advantage of it being a small building, create some vertical articulation in the narrow and tall windows. We also feel that that actually does relate to some of the surrounding buildings, including the library, with some of the elements that fit in there. Taking some brick pilasters, some traditional elements, and blending them with such things as the glass corner. Staff did mention the corner treatment. One of the interesting things about the 2 buildings across the street, they both have curved facades. This one we chose to use a squared off corner. We have already started taking into account the ideas that staff has had and looking at ways to improve the plaza itself, but also look forward to your comments on the overall architecture and the corner. These facades, in fact, the lower of the 2 is actually our what I guess you could consider our rear facade, but we all know that buildings are 4-sided and there's really not a back. This does face the towers. It is buffered by our landscaping and our green space there, as well as a significant setback between the 2 buildings. This is one of the slides I mentioned. You can see in relation to the towers, approximately 130 feet tall, where we're about 48 feet. As to the plate height, it is only 44'6". And a significant setback from there. And then across at Casa Baywood, again, there's a pretty significant height difference there. This is actually kind of almost the same view that Rendell put up of the vacant lot that we're able to fill in the building. So I think it sits pretty nicely on that corner, presenting a strong corner, but as we know, there's always ways to improve those corners, and some of which I believe are also can be done in an urban context in landscaping and plaza design as well. This highlights that a little bit more. Again, I think even just adding some landscape to it would take this a step in the right direction. So we look forward to your comments on that. This was one of the views we actually wanted to add. It wasn't in the original pre-application, but it's kind of what a view you would see from the towers. It does show that we're actually well screened. The building steps back. It steps back on the upper level, and it is not an imposing structure. With that, I will, before I go, I do want to say one thing. Since staff had already sent us the comments and questioned the ideas of residential as an option as far as adding residential, that is something we've talked to, and the client is open to adding residential onto this as a possibility, but we would also look forward to your input on that and interest in that. So with that, I'll open it up to comment and answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Excuse me. Any clarifying questions for staff before we go to public comment?
I can see.
Through the chair, yeah. I have a question, clarifying question for the applicant, actually. So, you had mentioned staff's comments about residential in their letter, and the staff had also mentioned some comments from the community. So the residential overlay, and some of this information is from the staff report, but the residential overlay for this site allows 50 units per acre, which amounts to a maximum of 13 homes on this parcel. Has the applicant considered using the new state housing law, AB 2011, on this project site? And the reason I ask is this site is located within a half-mile of transit next to a large commercial corridor, so that would allow up to 80 units per acre on this site, which would provide, up to 21 homes, and you could still use a third of the square footage for something other than residential. So.
We haven't gotten to that point yet in studying that, understand that is available to us. One of the challenges that we're facing with this project in the number of units we want to try and apply is where there is some concern about lack of parking for residential. And in the more units we provide without parking, the more challenging it is to market them and get the right tenants in. We're looking at, for lack of a better term, the sweet spot and how many units we can provide and feel they're appropriate, as perhaps you call them boutique units that attract the right type of tenants, those who have interest in living and working in downtown. And there's just a little bit concern if we go too high on unit count that we're not going to be able to do that.
Sure, thank you.
Through the chair. Question to staff, kind of dovetailing to what we were just discussing with the applicant. So there's no parking in the proposal. There is a city-owned garage pretty close to this at Second, is that right? Second and El Camino. Is there like available parking there? Would that be contemplated as a potential way for employees of this building to park there, or potentially even if residential were to be introduced, would there be sort of long-term parking potentially available there or somewhere else off-street?
Yeah, I don't have the data as to, I recall that back in 2019, there was a pretty long wait list to get a long-term parking permit on the, I think, Second and El Camino parking garage. We'd have to follow up with our public works staff to see how long that list is at this point. So we'd have to follow up separately.
Okay. One other question to staff. There's a buffer, either a step back or setback or combination of them when you're adjacent to the residential land use. So it looks like and there may be some nuance in dimensions here a little bit, but it looks like they've complied by a combination of a 15-foot setback at the ground, and then on an intermediate level, they've taken 25% of the depth of the building and stepped that back. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, the code allows in the E2 zone to meet the interior side setback, which in this case abuts an R5 zone in two ways. So one is, as you've noted, Commissioner, is stepping the building back by 25%, or stepping the entire building back, including the first two floors, by half of the building height.
Okay. And I know there's just in a vacuum, if this building were taller, that sort of that stepped back footprint that it has for level 3, in theory, that could be extruded up in a vacuum, not thinking about height limits or FAR. Otherwise, it would comply with this particular.
Yes, setting aside building height limits and floor area limits, if the project added stories, the fourth floor and above effectively would be subject to the same step back of 25% of the building width as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question about parking. So the project falls under AB 2097, which meaning that a project within a half mile from major public transit is not required to provide any parking. So my question for the applicant is, it's just based on my recollection of what we saw last time, whenever that was, I seem to recall it was really difficult to even make underground parking work because of, like you said, the ramps and just the logistics of fitting it in, mainly because of the ramps, I guess, and stairs. So I guess I wanted to just have you touch on that. How feasible is it to even provide underground parking? Like, does it even fit?
Underground parking is not feasible on this site. There simply isn't the dimension to even provide a ramping system to get down. You mentioned the vertical circulation stairs and elevator. When you look at that floor plate, we've got a site that's only 11,000 square feet and very small dimensions. Our previous iteration, when we were trying to provide parking just on the first floor, we were maybe approximately 7 to 10 spaces, depending on exactly how, and this was pre-reach codes, so we were subject to only a single ADA van at the time. Now, with the reach codes and the required EV accessible stalls, the number of spaces we could even feasibly provide on the site at all is so limited that we didn't find it of value to the site to do that, as well as it was cutting away the opportunity to create an active building. So, I mean, I think we always endeavor to provide parking with any project we do. I think it's an interesting situation where the city's own zoning across the street allowed those buildings directly across the street to build without parking, but because we were across the street at the time, we needed to provide parking. Unfortunately, the constraints are such that we just cannot.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for the clarification. I just wanted to refresh my memory.
Seema? No? I'm sorry, I do have one other question for you, sir. And I forget your first name. Evan. Evan, thank you. I think that we, as a commission, have been told numerous times that with residential, it's almost impossible to get financing unless you do have some parking included. So is that part of this, or what would hold you back also here, or no?
That's, again, originally why the application came in as it did is because our initial intent was to go with 100% office parcel. Knowing some of the interest both of the city, of staff, and the neighborhood, we are open to looking at it. And we'll look into both what we can fit on the site and what we feel is appropriate, as well as how to get that financing for something without parking. It is doable. We do know it's been done. Again, that's one of the reasons why we're looking at it as perhaps a smaller number of units, something a little bit more boutique, because not only do we think the financing is easier when you can balance it with the office square footage we're providing, but we also feel it's easier to market those and get the right tenants in.
Yeah, I think I've seen the formula used once in downtown San Mateo where there were 5 units on the top floor. And I don't recall the parking requirements at all. I'm not so sure what they were, but it has been done, obviously. Here. Cool. Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Oh, I had one quick question. Can as it is, can the space be used for office or retail? At least, obviously, the first floor would be.
Through the chair, if I may. So this is zoned E2, and so retail uses actually aren't permitted.
Oh.
In the E2 zone, interestingly, it would permit restaurant uses, but not specifically retail sales.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Do we have any public comments, Ashley?
Yes, we have one public commenter in person, and then if you want to comment on Zoom, please raise your hand at this time. So it looks like we have one public commenter via Zoom as well. And then Dallas Delander, you can come up to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Nels Delander. I was born here in San Mateo, and I'm a representative of the local 217 Carpers Union of San Mateo County. The project at 2 West Avenue is a good-sized development and has the potential to change some lives for those who live in this community. I'm hoping this project is going to use a responsible contractor. Having responsible contractors that pay area standard wages, healthcare benefits, utilizes local hire, and promotes state-approved apprentice programs isn't too much to ask for. Knowing that the encouraging language for protecting workers is part of the general plan, I hope this project can provide a general contractor that meets these conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then our last speaker is Jordan Grimes. Jordan, you can go ahead and unmute.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jordan Grimes, 19th Avenue Park. Hopefully the echo has stopped now. I'll just be blunt and say that I personally, nothing against the applicant, but find this project to be a pretty big bummer. This site on 3rd Avenue has been vacant for a long time, feels really ripe for housing, especially in an area that is badly in need of it. And I'm really curious what conditions would be needed to make housing possible on this site. I think we know from a number of different sources that obviously our height and density limits make it prohibitively expensive to build, but I'm pretty surprised to see an office project moving forward at a time when commercial real estate is really struggling, not only here but across the Bay Area. So I'm curious what the financials are and what's driving this project, and if there are ways that we can make it possible to have more housing downtown, because it is quite a bummer to see an office project moving forward like this. Yeah, I think that's it for me. I would also just say, as an aside, that it's concerning to see sites like this moving forward with office. I think we have a number of sites on our housing element where we're going to end up in situations like this, where we have predicted housing but are going to see office if these kind of trends hold. And it does not bear well for the future of development in San Mateo if this is what's happening. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jordan.
Chair Ebnetter, we have no more public commenters.
Thank you. We'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission. Do we want to go directly to the slides that have been prepared for us to address the different topics? So do we want to start and take each item individually, all of us comment, and then wrap it up? Great. Margaret, would you like to start on the proposed land use?
So not all 3 items at once?
I don't know. I'd kind of like to break it up.
Okay.
Yeah. Good with that?
Sure. I noticed that the first comment from staff in the report is that it should incorporate housing. So, it seems that that everyone's in agreement that it would be nice if this incorporated some housing. I guess on the other hand, I don't see this, like, it's an interesting corner for housing, I guess. It's not, to me, it's not necessarily like the first location the first thing I would have thought about for this corner. But there's housing on both sides of it, so it does seem strange that it's completely just office space. I don't think the parking issue is a concern if it becomes housing. One way or another, whether it's office space or residential, I don't see how you get parking in this building. So, as we just talked about, I mean, it's like the size of, 2 of my houses, my lots where I live, and it's not a very big site. So, that doesn't seem like an issue to me. I mean, I feel like the applicant and the developer must, I mean, to the last speaker's comments about, what's feasible in terms of the development and the proposal. I would think, it does seem surprising for it to be all office in terms of feasibility at this, point in time with so much office space not being used. I would leave that to the experts to know what's feasible in terms of a project. The other thing I was going to comment on was that I think it's interesting that the kind of housing that would work there would be limited, would work if we were to incorporate it into this building, the design of this building, would be, sort of boutique apartments or boutique units, because that's what would fit within that space. I don't know, does that help our housing problem? Maybe it does, but we have lots of high-priced housing already, so I'm not sure I don't really know what the answer is, but I guess I have the same concerns that have been out there.
Thank you. Seema?
Through the chair, thank you. I agree with Commissioner Williams and with the comments in the staff pre-application comment letter. Would love to see some housing on this site. I think just for some additional context in the community, our housing element, which was just certified a few days ago, notes that the number of jobs in San Mateo from 2010 to 2021 has grown by 42%, while the number of homes has grown by just over 4%. I think that's why we're seeing a lot of comments from the community asking about housing uses over office uses, particularly there was a public comment for this project that noted near this site there is a vacant office building. And so I think when people see vacant office buildings and when they know the numbers around job growth versus housing growth, that's what's spurring some of these comments from the community. Especially on this particular site where on one side you've got a 6-story residential building and on the other side you've got a 12-story residential building, clearly there are people who find residential uses in this area to work out just fine for them, so I think it would probably work out fine on this site too. And then I'll just note, since you said that you're open to the idea of housing, I'll go ahead and throw in some more information. Our draft general plan looks to change the use of this site to mixed-use high-density, 5 to 8 stories, 100 to 130 units per acre. You pair that with AB 1287, which allows up to 100% density bonus. At the maximum numbers, you're talking about a max of 67 units on this site. So there is the potential to do quite a lot, but as you said, you have to think about what works for this site. But I'll note that at 11,400-ish square feet, you're talking about 75 employees. So 75 employees versus 67 units of housing. From a parking standpoint, I feel like that's somewhat comparable. So like Commissioner Williams, I'm not super concerned about the parking issue. I think we're in such a huge housing crisis that you would be able to find people who live car-free and are interested in living half a mile from a Caltrain station and just 1 block from some really great restaurants and shops. And we have seen projects come before us in the past few years in downtown that are mixed use and that do not have parking on site, and I believe that they're all fully leased, so I'm not concerned about that particular issue. And then I'll just say, the reason you see mixed-use projects with 5 units of housing attached is because that's what needed to trigger state density bonus law. So a lot of mixed-use projects will do that because then they can get the waivers and concessions. Those are all of my comments on the land use.
Thank you. Jump to you, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know how much I can add. I'm in strong agreement with my fellow commissioners that have already spoken, and I will agree. I'll agree with all that. I'll say I used to live in a condo on Tilton Avenue, just really close to this, and so I know people that that chose to live there car-free. I've sort of met them. They were my neighbors. I had a car in the garage, and they just didn't, and they loved it. They loved walking to downtown, and that's what strikes me about this location. I might just have a few general comments about this sort of project that feels right to me, and then when we get to building design, I'll talk about the project that's before us. But what strikes me is like the height. There's always talk when we get a project that's taller than what's around it. There's just concern about the impact of that height. And it strikes me that this is the reverse. There's almost no impact if you went a bit taller here, because there's quite large buildings on multiple sides. And so the impact of height and mass here seems really minimal. Agree again with the parking, agree on residential as a land use, and agree on parking not being a big concern. There's maybe been some talk on retail, just even if that was just a comment from a community meeting, but retail doesn't make a lot of sense to me here. I feel like the gravity, the sort of the locus of retail is on the other side of El Camino, and I have a hard time imagining you being able to pull that number of people across from a retail perspective. So it feels like a great spot for some housing or mixed use. It is such a small site. If you think about the way the elevators and the egress would work, maybe you just want one use. But I'm really appreciative to my commissioners already having done some of the math on this. And that's all I'll say on land use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I also agree. I think the letter from the city's Development Review Board and Planning Division is pretty spot on a lot on its comments to you. So I want to encourage the development team to heed their comments. And as I mentioned before, I also want to encourage the applicant to consider AB 2011 because it could likely result in close to the same amount of non-residential space as is currently proposed if they're looking at developing a project here and now for that site. And it probably would provide a nice route to get housing on that site. Other than that, I think everybody said how I feel too with the proposed land use.
Okay. Thank you all so much for your input. And thank you, Architect and Evan, for opening the door to discussing this project beyond just an executive office building. I enjoy the fact that the city does have a residential overlay on this project, yet that's very common for downtown, and the vast majority of the time it gets developed as executive office building with a little bit of housing included. And I think that even though the city is encouraging looking at housing here, normally we have not been afforded to be lucky enough to get a lot of housing on these sites. I think that as we move forward with our housing element and our general plan update, it will be addressed accordingly. Yet at this time, we have not put, to my feelings, the correct policies and zoning in place to make sure that we get these types of sites developed along the guidelines that the city is asking for. I know it's a small site. I think it's a very nice little site. I was there today. I was shocked at how noisy it is. It's a very noisy corridor or corner. But I would hope that with the different state laws and concessions and city concessions, that we could develop this property at a much higher value. That is one of the general plan's overriding messages, is that we maximize the use of our resources, and in this case, the resource being empty land. But again, thank you for letting us touch on this subject because it's not really the project that's before us. And I'm hoping that as we look at some of the building designs and bring some other, pertinent issues to the table, that you will be able to incorporate them in something that might be more beneficial for the community at large. Can we go to building design? Anybody want to jump on that first, since we've got numerous architects here?
Through the chair,
Yes.
I'm not a licensed architect. But I'll take the bait and go first. So I'll just jump in right where you're talking about the site. This is, to me, is a really special location in San Mateo. It's a bit of a historic crossroads, almost as old as the city as itself is sort of, this intersection. And I think there's notable architecture in the immediate vicinity. We've touched on the Casa Baywood, which everyone loves, and Foster Towers, which I'm not sure everyone in San Mateo loves, but I love it, as well as the AP Giannini branch of the Bank of America. And so I think it has sort of elevated context, and I think it's a melange of styles, though, and so if we're talking about an office project here, I don't see one objective stylistic solution, so that's where I'm going to sort of plant my first stake. Is I have no problem with the sort of transitional style, and I don't think, if you came in with a Spanish Mediterranean revival building, I'd be fine with that too, but I think given what's around it is actually more modern than traditional, I think it's doing kind of a good job of trying to respond to that. So what I like about it, it's picking up on the tone, the mood, and the texture of what's around it. I think it's somehow, Casa Baywood and Foster Towers are quite different, but I feel like it's managing to relate to both. I think our actual architect can maybe offer you guidance on how it could do that better, but I feel like that's heading in the right track. And sort of at a pre-app level, I think I'm fine with that. If I zoom in a little bit and look at the materiality, I'm not convinced right now by the stucco at the base and the brick above. I think I like brick as a material, but I feel like it needs, if you're going to have brick in the middle, you should have something more substantial at the base, is my opinion. Maybe there's an execution of stucco or plaster that has that solidity to it where it feels like it could actually be supporting brick, but kind of feels like it should be the reverse to me. But I like the brick in the middle. I think if you did something more massive at the base, stone or cast stone, or thought about the jointing of it that suggested coins or something that's a bit more massive, I think that would feel a bit better. I'll say my last comment I'm going to say is something special, and that's what I think is missing. This site is meaningful, it's important, it's historic, lowercase h. The downtown plan, I think I found this on page 44. The downtown plan contemplates major entry features at 3rd and El Camino, 4th and El Camino, so this is a spot for that. So I think this site deserves something special. I think what we have is a nice building thus far, but I don't think it's elevated itself to the level of this particular context. I think one way would be to come back with a really bespoke design. But if you're not going to come back with something that's really holds the corner, something that's really unique, then I think you need a special element. The Bank of America building has the murals. Casa Baywood has this really special little water feature tucked in at the base. And even those modern buildings across the street that I think are not as good have elements like the clock on it or an art piece. So I'm not asking for plop art here, but I'm saying this building is not yet acknowledging its context. I think it's on the right track, but if I had to throw something out there, I would say it needs one of those two columns at the corner they're symmetrical right now. Maybe one of them needs to be accentuated with something interesting. There's other ways to do it. I don't want to be too specific, but I think that's what's missing, given this particular location, which is super special, one of my favorite sites. And I'm, like other people, I'm probably, a bit bummed that it's sat empty for so long. And so I'm eager to see it improved from what it is today. And the last small thing, it's not quite building design, but thank you for at least saving the high value trees. So you've got a table in there and you do the calculation of the landscape units, and all the high value oaks are the ones that were saved. So I just wanted to call that out as a thank you. And those are all my comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, to kind of build off of what Commissioner Wiggins saying, I do see this site as a major gateway, both to the downtown and into the Baywood neighborhood. And at this point, the design feels very inoffensive. That's maybe the best way to put it. Like, inoffensive, like, it's kind of just there. And it's not, nobody's going to look at it and be like, ooh, that's an ugly building, which, is a good thing. I mean, there's too many of those in the world. But it's also not particularly special yet. And I think part of it is because it feels like this building could be literally anywhere. It could be designed anywhere. You could put it in Kansas. You could put it in Florida. You could put it like it. And to me, I do find it a shame that the architecture is not embodying the common aesthetics of the neighborhood. Be that Tudor Revival, but especially the Mission Revival style of the neighboring building, Casa Baywood. And I say that not because, we're looking back and we want to have everything be a certain style that was based on a certain decade that things were built. You can't go backwards in time. You can only just do what is forwards. So there are buildings around there of varying appeal, and it's rather eclectic in that area. But I think that going forward, we should try to get more stuff in line with what people have over the years and quite consistently expressed that they like to see the most. And that doesn't mean that everything has to be the same. It just means that it would be appropriate for this kind of corner to, pick up on the neighboring building, or also incorporate the brick facade that they have proposed into something a little bit more in line with like a Spanish Mission Revival. So for instance, I think of buildings like 345 Spear Street at Hills Plaza in San Francisco, which is a brick building, but of that style, or 1 Lombard Street in San Francisco along the Embarcadero. Both of those are brick buildings, but they have the kind of the Roman arch styles that you see and commonly with Spanish Mission, just not a stucco. Those aren't stucco buildings. And then also I do want to mention that I appreciate the rhythm and the texture that is currently provided by the vertical alternation between the pilasters and the windows. That texture is good, and I would like to see that going forward, how you have designed that. I do feel that, are we going to talk about the entry corner treatment separately? No, okay, let's just keep going. Yeah. So I do feel that there's a common trend right now in a lot of contemporary buildings to have kind of a big, massive windowed, two-sided corner. And they often feel like a lost corner or a void when you think of Mass and what you experience. for the building. It's just kind of a dark recess during the day. And I would like to see more work to provide, the desired contrasting statement that you're going for, without creating, in essence, a large-scale gap or sort of a visual vacuum that many of the iterations kind of end up as. And it can be fairly subtle. It doesn't need to be a giant, unique tower. For instance, I'd like you to check out the corner treatment of that one Lombard Street at the Embarcadero in San Francisco. All it is a slightly elevated sort of half floor, partial floor at the top, just to signify, hey, this is a special corner, but it continues the rest of the rhythm and the detailing of the rest of the building at the corner. It's not screaming, hey, this is the corner. So those are my thoughts for the design. Again, completely inoffensive. And I mean that in the very best way. I just would hope that such a prominent corner, again, the two more recently built buildings across the street on El Camino on the corner of 3rd are kind of, they're also very inoffensive, but they're very forgettable. And so they just kind of blend into the background. And I would be a little disappointed if this building ended up doing that too. And I'm not asking you to go out and spend a bunch of money on particular beautiful, hard to find finishes. It's more a matter of just like getting something that maybe says, hey, did you know that the Baywood neighborhood is here and the downtown San Mateo is right here. You just turn left or right and you're at the heart of the city. So that's just my thoughts on the design. So.
Thank you.
Through the chair. This is the great thing about a study session at the Planning Commission, because you have 3 commissioners and you're going to get 3 different opinions, and then it's up to you to figure out how to synthesize that information. So I'll say that I personally like their traditional modern architectural style. I agree with my other commissioners that in that location, you don't see a lot of this style, but in other places in downtown, we're starting to see more of this. So I think within the context of downtown, it does fit. I like that the look is really clean. I feel like this style will be fairly timeless. Not quite sure about the stucco brick combo, but generally brick is a fairly timeless material. And what I really like about this building is that the massing and the facade are not overly articulated. This is about at like the max articulation I like to see in a building. Usually projects we see are far more articulated, and I'm the person here always saying, can we tone that down? Can we make it less busy? Can we make it more simple? And I think this does it really well. There's just enough visual interest that it's not a monolith, but it's not overly busy. I think to get a little bit more specific, talking about the corner, I like that the corner is really simple. I think when you look at those reference images across the street of the corner treatments, those corners stand out to me in a bad way. They do not feel cohesive with the design of those buildings. It feels like someone told them, you have to do a strong corner. And so a corner is stuck on that doesn't really fit. Agree with Commissioner Nugent. One Lombard is a good example of doing a little bit extra, a little bit of zhuzh on the corner without going too far, but I like the current corner. I think it's really clean. If you're gonna do a strong corner, think about how to do it in a way where it feels like part of the building, an extension of the design language, and not something that just got stuck on. One more very specific comment, might be too early for a comment this specific, but if you look at the renders of that corner, particularly the corner of El Camino and 3rd, it looks like the topmost canopy is bisecting the windows. And I think that looks a little bit goofy. So I would maybe stop the top of the windows at the canopy or figure out some sort of datum line that you could align everything to. on that specific elevation. And then I was going to say, if you do end up doing a sole office use, maybe think about future proofing and think about future residential conversion with the location of your core services, but it sounds like there's a lot of openness to considering residential now. Those are all of my design comments. Thank you.
Okay, great. Great comments from everybody. I really appreciate all of those. And I'm kind of here and there on some of them. So I hadn't thought about the fact that this is actually a historic pathway from the west on 3rd Avenue, and then, of course, you know, El Camino is the Royal Road. That, you know, kind of historic corner is important. The other thing I was going to comment on from the earlier comments was that I hadn't really, I had thought about it, but I hadn't thought of a solution. But in terms of the comment about the stucco as, you know, a base and then brick above and how that works. And I was wondering would the stucco work if it wasn't, I think it's like shown in a light color. I don't know if that would help. So that crossed my mind as well, and I'm not sure what's the right base material there, but something to think about. So, I mean, in general, I agree with Commissioner Patel, though. I like the transitional design. I feel like it's somewhat tailored. It's kind of got this simplicity, but it's a really nice nod to the more modern building on one side, and of course the very traditional Casa Baywood, and it sort of bridges that, and I think it relates nicely to the library. Somebody made that comment too, and the library is one of my favorite buildings in town. And so I liked that. I like the transition. I think it's literally a transitional style that works because it is in the middle of a number of different kinds of things. Again, I'm kind of going through all these comments other people have made, but I especially liked the verticality of the windows that you commented on because it literally relates to the vertical elements of the windows at Casa Baywood. I think when we saw this before, one of my comments was that I just loved that whole building, Casa Baywood, and the side elevation has this element near the top. And so this small scale building without a lot of mass to it really respects that neighbor extremely. And I feel like the windows work nicely with that. So let's see. In terms of the corner design, I'm a little torn because I think that it could be something more interesting. I like that it's sort of light and glassy, but it does, as Commissioner Wiggins said, the building does need something a little more special to denote it on this corner that is kind of an important corner. So that, you know, whatever that special element is could be there. However, as we've all said, the heavy corner elements across El Camino are not the right thing. That's not the direction that we want to go either. So I think maybe it's, it's some more work on that corner and without overdoing it and still keeping it, kind of light and interesting would be the direction that I would like to see it go. There was a comment in the report, something about, I thought there was a comment in the report somewhere about, adding either arches or something, some other, details. Arches do not work with this design. I mean, to me, this design is this, it's working with the other buildings that are in the area. As I said, the library, and, the building across the street and the building next door. So I don't agree that that's what would work here. I think the details such as the sunshades and the use of the materials is going in the right direction in my mind. So those are my comments. I think it's got the potential to be a great little building. It's rather unimposing for the corner, but I guess it's particularly clear in the elevations when you see the giant building to its, to the west of it. So I don't know what it's hard to know what that would really look like, but I guess we know what the empty site looks like with that large building. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting that the massing is so much less imposing. That's it.
Thank you.
Through the chair, can I never mentioned anything about the lower level, the street level material in the brick, and I actually want to defend it. Whether it's cast stone that's being shown in the rendering or stucco, often in traditional architecture, you would stucco over brick when you had the money to do it. And so the most important places, you would get a stuccoed wall. And so to me, it seems fine to have the material contrast. And it's not like, oh, this is a weaker part because it's stucco. No, usually what stucco represented was just in classic Mediterranean architecture, just trying to make it look nicer, less rustic with that the brick at the time used to be. So obviously we've had many centuries of architectural innovation with beautiful brick buildings, but I just want to defend that design that they are showing at the level.
Sorry, through the chair. Could I bring up one other design topic that I was curious if people had an opinion on? And it's something that you mentioned, Chair Abnetter, just the noise that's here. And I'm curious if commissioners have an opinion on how much the ground plane should welcome people to stay and linger, or is it too noisy here and what's needed at the ground plane, just because I think we had a prompt from staff around the corner and the plaza element. I'm just curious if people had an opinion. My sense is this landscape, the horizontal plane at the corner needs work, but I wouldn't want people spending a lot of effort making a habitable landscape that no one's ever going to inhabit. And I was just curious if anyone wanted to react to that.
Yeah, I'll comment on that. I don't see it being that hospitable of a corner to, hang out and to develop a plaza that is going to be, occupied by people other than just passing by. I think that, cars are going pretty darn fast on El Camino sometimes, and it just doesn't seem like the right place for that. Obviously landscaping is important visually and otherwise, but however, there was a comment made that it doesn't seem like the right place for retail. I feel like if again, we know, like offices, it seems difficult to find retail tenants as well. But all of that aside, if I could see it being a retail space, because people are walking from the residential neighborhood on the west to downtown and then back again, or from the library to downtown or to home. So I feel like it's potentially got a high amount of pedestrian passersby.
Yeah, through the chair. I've got a 4-year-old, and I've gone to the library many a time walking across El Camino from that direction, from the other side, because of where I live. And it is very noisy on that corner, and there's not a lot of room currently because of the fencing that's blocking the site. And so just having a landing, a comfortable space to land after you cross the street or as you're about to wait to cross the street is enough. You're not going to want to linger there outside of going in and out of the building, crossing the street comfortably and kind of stepping away from being right on the edge of the sidewalk. And I think the space that's shown in the rendering seems appropriate.
Through the chair, I agree with my fellow commissioners. El Camino is not a hospitable street, so I would not heavily invest in making in placemaking that would try to encourage people to linger, because I don't think people are going to linger. That particular corner is a high pedestrian traffic corner, I think, because of the library. I also walk and bike downtown a lot, to the library a lot, and so I'm very familiar with that corner, but as someone who walks and bikes downtown to other establishments on El Camino, it is terrifying to walk even on the sidewalks that are super narrow, or to bike. And I don't think anyone is going to linger unless and until the Grand Boulevard Initiative comes to fruition. And, you know, that's been in the works for several decades and has not gone anywhere. So I would make a safe landing spot for people crossing the corner, but I would not invest more than that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, thank you all. And thank goodness that architects have thick skin.
Get through school.
When I first opened up this set of drawings, I looked at sheet A 3.03, and I just laughed, because that's the sheet that shows the 12-story project or building that it will be adjacent to. And it made me think of the childhood story of a small house on a hill that got built around by the large city, and then they had to pick the house up and move it to the country to have peace and quiet. And to me, we're doing this a little bit backwards. So, you know, it's just the striking difference between the heights there just really, really caught my eye. And again, so much of the general plan has to do with maximizing the use of the property that we have available. And unfortunately, there are very few empty lots in the city of San Mateo. I actually, I like the architecture of this building. I just don't like it at this place. I think there does need to be some improvement to make it more feel more the neighborhood context. And what I want to say of the neighborhood context is I've only walked the neighborhoods two or three times, and each time it was because we are looking at a proposal for this lot, and it really feels like home. It's quiet. The residential streets are small. The traffic is not bad at all. The tree coverage is very comfortable. It's a very calming area, and to me, it lends itself to more of a residential type of a feeling than a commercial feeling. And I know the idea here is to put a commercial building on there. I just don't have the same feeling that it's the appropriate place. I do like the two smaller buildings across the street, and I do like their entryways. Well, I should say I like the clock and I like the artwork. And I think that speaks to you don't have to do anything spectacular to make your building more appealing. Little things can do it. And I think those are two examples that I like about those buildings. I don't think they're spectacular, but that little bit of different effort works for me. I've always been a big fan of brick. I think it's an extremely attractive building material. I do like the separation of the colors on this building from the base to the upper floors. I'm not saying that that's exactly what I would want there. I want something with a little bit more warmth. I've never been a huge fan of the B of A building, but I do like the library. I think they did a fantastic job with the library. This does tie into some of those components there, and I can understand the need to do that. Yet I feel more of a pull towards the other direction of the Spanish style than I do of the modern style. I think it is an extremely important piece of property to have a building that says, as I think somebody said, hey, this is Baywood and this is the El Camino Real, and we're proud to present ourselves in that way. I don't feel that this building is taking that extra step to really showcase how beautiful that area is. And I know that the architects have the skill set to improve it, and I have to assume they will. To me, the entryway into any type of building, commercial, residential, is huge. I want to know where I'm going, why I'm going there, and how I'm going to get there. And I want it to feel welcoming, and I don't feel that same warmth in the way this one is set up. So that was it. That was my building design and design treatments. Now we go to item number 3, the all on the important other aspects? Item number 3 on the list.
Through the chair, I just want to thank my fellow Commissioner Nugent for always bringing examples of particular buildings. And I just note to myself, I want to try to make more of an effort to not just have comments, but to be able to say, like, look at this particular building. That's incredibly helpful. So kudos to you. Commissioner, no comments for me on other aspects.
Any more design aspects anybody wants to discuss, or other options or other items that we could bring to the table? No?
Oh, I have one other aspect that I wanted to mention, and I just want to recommend adding additional bicycle parking lockers on site. I noticed there's, I think, only one, and it seems like there's room for more.
Cool.
I think I covered everything already.
Got everything?
Yes.
Good? Seema? Great. We'll close that item and move to announcements and upcoming meetings, maybe?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, Chair and Honorable Commissioners. Manira Sandhir, Planning Manager. I have a few reports and announcements since this is our first meeting of the year. We have a Sarah High School biannual neighborhood meeting tomorrow night, so in case anybody's interested, that's required by their use permit.
I'm sorry, what was it?
This is the Sarah High School. This is a neighborhood meeting that's done twice a year. It's a part of their use permit condition.
Oh.
It's a neighborhood meeting that's required to monitor how they're operating.
Okay.
On the general plan, we are very excited to note that the final general plan and the final environmental impact report was published last week, and this item has been scheduled before the Planning Commission next week through a special meeting on January 30th. So that meeting will begin at 6 p.m., and I believe we have everybody in person here for that meeting. Excellent. As was noted earlier, another exciting piece of news from last week was getting our substantial compliance letter from the State Housing and Community Development Department, which means that we are gearing up now for bringing the housing element back to the Planning Commission and City Council for adoption, after which we would formally get certification from the state. For that, we are looking at meetings in either on either February 27th or March 12th. So I did want to check if commissioners are present on both those dates and if anybody plans to be remote. February 27th or March 12th?
Okay, I think I'm fine. Let me just double check. I had
Okay.
all those dates flying around in my head earlier.
All right, it looks like we might have 4 commissioners present in person and 1 to confirm. Yeah, absolutely. We also have our next meeting, or rather next regularly scheduled meeting on February 13th. So please mark your calendars. I believe we will have a study session item for that meeting as well. And I believe Commissioner Williams is remote for that meeting.
I was going to say, could you go over these dates again? I was trying to find a calendar to look at. What was the thing that you just said?
Yes, we can go one by one. So next week we have the January 30th general plan meeting, so everybody's present in person.
Yes.
The next meeting after that will be February 13th. And for that meeting we'll have a study session. So I'm seeing nods.
And for that meeting, I would be able to log in remotely.
That sounds good, as long as all the other commissioners are present in person. Perfect. And then the meeting after that, which we are not sure yet what item may be on it. It's possible we might target the housing element for that meeting. We'll have to see. Would be the February 27th meeting. So just checking to see if everybody, and we'll confirm with you separately, Commissioner Wiggins. And then March 12th is also a tentative hold for the housing element recommendation hearing.
So as I emailed you, my daughter is having a baby in March, and I am going to be traveling to be there. So, of course, we don't know when babies come. It's just a due date. It's just an estimate. So, I mean, I'll keep you posted. You're thinking it would be March
12th.
12th. Okay. Hopefully the baby comes later. It's due later in the month.
Okay, we will. It sounds like we might still have quorum because Commissioner Patel, Commissioner Nugent and Chair Ebnetter, you're available, and then I'll confirm with you. Perfect. Okay. Thank you. All right, that's all the upcoming meetings. We also have another community meeting planned next week, which is a historic workshop that the department will be conducting on February 1st. So there has been an elevated level of interest in the historic designation process, the city's review process, and all of that, how all of that factors in, to decisions that property owners can make with regards to the changes they want to do to their homes. So that it has been posted and published or noticed for the community to join. So you're welcome to attend as well. It's going to be 6 to 8 p.m. over Zoom, and the community will have an opportunity to ask questions through chat and just hear the presentation that our historic consultant has prepared. So it's just an informational workshop. Moving on to trainings. Boy, we have a lot to cover, don't we? So we have a training coming up from the 21 Elements, which will be focused on housing laws that went into effect this year or will be going into effect this year. That's going to be on February 29th. So I believe I've shared the registration information in the past, but I'll send it again. And if you're interested, just please let me know. I will probably be joining as well some other members of our planning team and city attorney's office, perhaps. The League of California Cities is also hosting their Planning Commissioners Academy in March. So if you want to pencil in those dates, it's going to be March 6th to 8th, and it'll be held at Long Beach. So I'll forward the registration information as well. And, our team, Ashley in particular, will be able to help you to register. I will note that, we request that you keep a good record of all your expenses if, you do any expenditures, because I think that's important. And those are required to be submitted to us within 10 days or 1 month. I'll have to check that within the event. But we'll share all that information so you have that handy. On staffing, the planning division is ramping up. We had, a few people leave last year, so we do have 2 new assistant planners on board that started in November and December, Elizabeth Gagliardi and Luis Caro. So hopefully they'll be presenting to you at some point. And then we are actively in the process of onboarding or, recruiting for 2 principal planners who will help us with some of the housing element implementation that's ahead of us. So more to report at the next meeting, hopefully. That's all. That's it from staff.
Anybody have any announcements from the commission? With that, then we'll close the meeting. Thank you all.